Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Kamen Entchev here with Tom Casselman. Bye week last week. I was back at Mizzou visiting our college and experiencing some typical Mizzou sports heartbreak. The girlfriend got initiated the right way, Tom. Heartbreaker against LSU.
Got the full Monty.
Full experience. Plenty to talk about on sports today, though. We have five 5-1 teams in the NFL. Which one of them is in the best position to make a Super Bowl run? Two of those 5-1 teams actually play each other this week. What a Sunday night football treat we have. Eagles and Dolphins. It's going to be epic. Tua, Jalen Hurts, former college teammates going at it. That's going to be a lot of fun. Some awesome college football on the docket. Ohio State, Penn State, undefeated teams. Matchup of top 10 teams. One team and one player we have not talked about yet on the show is Washington and Michael Penix Jr., who is the new Heisman Trophy favorite after Caleb Williams struggling against Notre Dame. Washington undefeated. Is that team for real? Are they going to make the college playoff? Are they going to be the top team in that awesome Pac-12? Got some baseball on the docket. Closing in on the World Series. Rangers looking great. Absolutely fantastic. The Phillies looking great. They're up 2-0 in their series. Are they hanging on, or do we have a little, comeback train for Houston and Arizona? Basketball season preview next week. We've also got betting locks of the week today. We are still slightly over 500. Miserable week last time, but we are, I think, just one game over 500 on the season as a team.
I might have it wrong. I have us at even.
Oh, and I had a wash, 3 points, or you'll see it when I go through the rundown.
I got you. Yeah.
6-5-1 for me, 6-6 for you. So we'll look at those records when we get there. But we're still hanging on by a thread, Tom, on the over 500 mark. We'll have sports trivia, statements of the week, all that and more. Cannot wait to get started, Tom. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. No, we had a little bit of a hiatus there, but coming back, we are looking at some really interesting, compelling football in the NFL. Is all of a sudden no more undefeated teams, and the injury monster kind of reaching out and biting a couple of different guys. I mean, we've got some injuries to the San Francisco 49ers, which played a role in their loss to the Cleveland Browns this past week. Coming up with Monday Night Football, we're not certain what the status is for Trent Williams, their star left tackle, Christian McCaffrey, arguably their most, maybe not even arguably, their most important skill position player.
Definitely.
Deebo Samuel as well. Well, I mean, it depends on if you want to throw in the quarterback, but I'd say, McCaffrey more important than the quarterback in this specific case.
It's McCaffrey.
Philadelphia, Lane Johnson going out with an injury, and Jalen Hurts playing not his best game with a few interceptions. And then, of course, we've got the Chiefs, Dolphins, Lions all at 4. I don't know why my words are not working.
Words are hard. It's been a 2-week bye for you, Tom.
And 1. So roughly, like you said, the third way mark of the season. Which of these teams, I think this bubble of 5-1 teams pretty much defines the Super Bowl contender. Maybe like the Bills, you could throw them in there, but we'll just stick to these 5-1 teams right now. Which of them are in the best position to make and win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think the Bills are definitely that 6th team. The Bengals maybe starting to figure it out. I mean, we've seen them get road playoff wins in Buffalo and Kansas City. Those are probably the other 2 contenders for me. Dallas, I'm sorry, not a contender. Sorry, Cowboy fans. Nuh-uh.
No, you're not. You're not
Dallas.
Sorry in the slightest.
I'm not sorry in the slightest. I do a sports podcast at work selling sports memorabilia. Cowboy fans are the most common team in our break room, Tom, and I work very hard not to make them upset. So on this show, Dallas jokes are allowed. Hopefully none of those guys are listening to this podcast, but I don't think Dallas is a contender at all, personally. As for those 5-1 teams, I think all 5 at this point are pretty close. I don't think much separates any one of them. But in terms of the best position to make a Super Bowl run, I'm looking at it not only necessarily who's the best right now, but kind of, progressing forward to who's going to be the best come the end of the season. This probably comes as no surprise to you, Tom. We got the Chiefs football in the background. I'm going Kansas City. Kansas City is 5-1. They've got one loss, week 1 against the Lions, without Travis Kelce, without Chris Jones. Their second and third best players, respectively, had a lot of fluke tip passes, got some drops. Just everything went wrong in that game, and they barely lost to a very good Lions team. That feels weird to say, a very good Lions team, but they are a very good team.
I don't think we've ever had the opportunity to say that in our lifetimes. Like literally
never been literally. I was too young when Barry Sanders was a superstar. I was in Bulgaria. Yeah, even then. Last time they won the division, by the way, Tom, 1993. I'm going to go with the Chiefs because right now, Tom, they got the exact same yards. I saw a weird statistic. Their total yards at this point this year is the same as it was last year. They're still 4th in the NFL in yards per game. They're one of the most explosive pass offenses still statistically in the top, 3, 4 in the league again. They're just struggling in the red zone. These are things that can be corrected. It's not as if they're not moving the ball. They're moving the ball just fine. They've got a very young receiving core. They got new weapons. They got a new offensive system. I think Mahomes, Reed, Kelce, they will figure this out. They'll get better in the red zone. They'll get better at getting touchdowns rather than field goals. The thing that Kansas City has going for itself, which is crazy if you think about it, they are tied for second in the NFL in scoring defense, allowing less than 15 points per game. This might be the worst offensive talent Mahomes has ever had in his career, but it is by a pretty big margin the best defense he's ever had. And they still have Kelce. They still have Andy Reid. Their offense is still very good. Their defense is miles better than they've ever been. I know offense at this stage matters more in the NFL, but if you have arguably a top 5 offense and arguably a top 5 defense, that's better than having a top 1 or 2 offense and then, the 10th, 11th, 12th defense in the NFL, which is what Kansas City has been typically. They also consistently play better in the second half of the season. They play better in the postseason. They've made 5 straight AFC championship games. This Kansas City team will be playing its best ball come the end of the season. For me, they're in the best spot to make the Super Bowl. I think they have, the best ability to be that team. I think the second and third best teams, position-wise, I actually think the Dolphins, for me, might be the best team right now. But I think San Francisco and Philadelphia, because the NFC is weaker, are in a better spot. Now, the big question mark with San Francisco is the same question mark we've had the last 5 years. Can they stay healthy? Luckily, reports seem that Christian McCaffrey is going to be fine. They think he might even play in the next game. By the way, Tom, I'm a huge Mahomes fan. I'm a huge Tua fan. Those are probably going to be the 2 MVP candidates. But if I had to pick the MVP right now in the NFL, I'm going to shock you. It's not Mahomes. It's not Tua. It's either Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey. Those are the 2 MVPs for me. Absolute explosive playmakers. Far and away right now the best of their positions, only because Jefferson is out. Otherwise, Jefferson and Tyreek right there. But Jettis is out with injury. So I think the Dolphins have a more explosive offense. They'll get Jalen Ramsey on defense in the second half of the year, but they are still in the AFC, where you have Kansas City. You've got yourself, obviously Buffalo, Cincinnati. There's an abundance of great teams. They're in a little bit tougher spot than the NFC teams just because of the competition, just because we haven't seen them do this. I mean, last year, the Eagles, Niners in the conference championship. We've seen these teams in the Super Bowl in the last 5 years. We haven't seen Miami make a playoff run ever. Same for Detroit. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe experience is overrated, but I think you need to get your feet wet a little bit. Detroit, their defense has surprised me a lot. Detroit actually has the easiest schedule of these teams. They play in the worst division, the NFC North. Detroit could be the 1 seed in the NFC, But I think San Francisco, we've seen how many times have they gone into Lambeau Field and won on the road. Philadelphia has gone into some tough environments, won on the road. Even if the Lions get the 1 seed in the NFC, I think it doesn't matter that much. I really think Philly and Philadelphia, or Philadelphia and San Francisco, rather, are capable of winning road games.
Sure.
So I think the Lions, as good as they are, and I talk about how I'm right all the time. I talk about how the Dolphins are in my AFC Championship game.
Sure.
I've had that before the season. I'll talk about when I'm wrong, Tom. I was wrong about Detroit. I do think they're for real. I questioned their defense going into the season. Their defense is much, much improved. With that said, of these 5 teams, I don't care what Stephen A. Smith says on his show, which he's crazy, by the way. He's got the Lions as the best team in the NFL, in case you missed what Stephen A. Smith said. I think they're still the 5th best team of these 5 teams. It's still the Detroit Lions. I cannot say I trust them nearly as much as these teams.
Sure.
So Kansas City, I think, are, best team, best experience. I think that 2nd and 3rd are, I'd say San Fran 2nd, Philly 3rd, but it's close. Philly has looked a little shaky this year, I'll be honest. Miami, I think, is the 2nd best team or the best team with Kansas City, but they're in a tougher spot, I think, because of the conference they're in. But all 5 of these teams can make a run. I would say 4 of them are really legit to me still, in Kansas City, Miami, Philadelphia, and San Francisco.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to start with San Francisco because I think that they are the most balanced team on here. I mean, I really like looking at adjustment metrics like DVOA. And looking at DVOA, they're number 1 in the NFL. They're ranked 2nd in offense and 5th in defense on DVOA. And this is where I get really aggravated by the quarterback win stat. Because if you look at the 49ers record since they acquired Christian McCaffrey, they lost the first game after they picked him up midweek. So if you want to kind of give a little bit of a mulligan there.
That was against Kansas City too, wasn't it?
I believe so. But outside of that, San Francisco is undefeated in the regular season in games where Christian McCaffrey starts and finishes the game. He missed the 4th quarter against Cleveland. They ended up losing the game. Not saying that he necessarily was the difference, but given that we were on the same page that if the season were to end today, Christian McCaffrey would be the MVP of the NFL. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that San Francisco could very well have won that game against Cleveland if
they still should have
finished it.
If the kicker made it. But you're right.
If the kicker,
they probably would have been in a better position had McCaffrey played. 100% agree with that.
Exactly. So, I mean, we attribute the win to the quarterback, but here's the 49ers looking amazing ever since they got Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. So for me, I really like San Francisco. And the injury thing for me, that's true for all teams as far as how far they can go. To this point in the season, at full strength, San Francisco looks like the most complete team, both on the field and on paper. Looking at DVOA, by the way, I was surprised to see Detroit Lions are number 2. I know that they've given up a lot of points, but according to DVOA, the way that they adjust the rankings and everything, 4th in offense, actually 3rd on defense. To talk to your point about how last year they were one of the worst teams, this year they're one of the best. I do think, as far as home field advantage goes, it matters more for them more than anybody else, because every time we see the Detroit Lions play, we see that graphic of what Jared Goff's stats are at home versus on the road in that dome controlled setting. I know hand size, that was a thing for him coming out of college that people were talking about. So being in that controlled environment could actually be very important for determining if Detroit is going to be making it far. But I mean, I agree that the Chiefs, they're kind of succeeding in spite of not having a great offense, which kind of feels weird to say. I mean, that kind of feels like, Matt Nagy's their offensive coordinator.
They're not finishing though, Tom. They're still getting a lot of yards. They're just not finishing.
Well, yeah, but so I'm not saying that yards don't matter, but especially in how the game is played today, yards can be a little bit deceptive, empty calorie type of thing. Like you can stack up between the 20s all you want. It's in that red zone that really, really matters. So I would say San Francisco is the most balanced team. I'm still going to say Philadelphia is the second team for me. just because it feels like they still haven't put it all together yet. We still haven't seen their best this season.
That's what I feel about Kansas City offensively, though, Tom.
True. Like that's
That's
pretty close coin flip between 2 and 3 for Philadelphia and Kansas City for me. The Dolphins. So here's the thing. Like I know that you are really, really high on the Dolphins. I'm not quite there simply because we saw them get blown out against
you'll
the
get
Buffalo
there.
Bills.
You'll get
We saw
there.
their
The
offense
Bills have
struggle
their number,
against,
though. It's one
well,
of
yeah,
those matchup
but look
things.
at the Patriots game as well. I mean, that's the game we're going up against a solid defense. I mean, they were able to win the game, and I'm not taking any shine from them for that. But if we're going to count into all their statistics, how they put up 70 on Denver, I mean, it kind of looks like they had some fairly easy
Stat
matchups against some
padding.
fairly bad defenses and teams. Looking at DVOA, no surprise, they are number 1 on offense. On defense, they're ranked 27th. So that suggests to me that when they get into these playoff games against teams that are going to have better defenses, that are going to have just better preparation, especially if they're going up against a bye week team, that's where I think the Dolphins kind of fall a little bit short as a Super Bowl contender. Of course, if they can tighten up the defense, that does change a lot of things. But for right now, we've seen them soar against subpar competition. It's going to be interesting to see the matchup against the Eagles this week, which I believe is in our rundown.
Yeah. I do want to have one thing before you transition. I know it's a perfect transition. I hate to ruin it.
Fantastic transition.
But I'm going to ruin it because I have just 2 things to say.
Sure.
So one about the Dolphins, I think getting Jalen Ramsey on defense, the corner
that
who
can help, sure.
they picked up is going to be a massive help, having 2 corners, him and Howard. And 2, again, I love statistics. Statistics, as you know, may be skewed. I'd argue their defensive statistic a little bit skewed. They're up in a lot of these games, so it becomes a little bit easier for teams to get garbage time points, garbage time yards. So I think while their offensive stats might be a little bit skewed, I'd argue their defensive stats are skewed as well in the opposite direction. Vic Fangio, a great DC. We see how great he looks now that the Broncos look really bad. As great as he is, every coach takes a little bit of time to get his new system in. I think Miami's going to look much better defensively at the end of the season. And I do want to say this about the Lions. We're kind of at the same stage where you want a little more from Miami. You want to see a tougher schedule, completely valid claim. I'd say the same about the Lions because, yes, they won week 1 at Kansas City. You and I both have talked about this ad nauseum. Week 1 in the NFL is very, very
it's weird,
especially now that these teams, don't play their bye weeks. I mean, they won because Kadarius Toney dropped what would have been a first down. It went for a pick 6. It was, Kelsey wasn't there. Jones wasn't there. I'm not saying it wasn't a great one against Kansas City, but that definitely had a fluke feeling to it week 1. They lost to Seattle week 2. They've taken care of business ever since. Got to give them credit for getting blowout wins, but it's Atlanta, Green Bay, Carolina, and Tampa Bay. Not very good competition for Detroit. Luckily for them, they have a very, very soft schedule the whole year. So let's see how they play when they match up against someone tough. Honestly, though, they play at Baltimore this week, who hasn't looked great. Their only really, really tough game all year, the rest of the way, is actually at Dallas. And Dallas is very up and down. The Lions might have one of the easiest schedules in the history of the NFL, Tom, which kind of bodes tough for them come playoff time because they don't really play playoff teams. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule right now. Kansas City, obviously a playoff team.
Sure.
New Orleans or Tampa or Atlanta likely gets in the playoffs because someone has to out of the South. But really the only playoff caliber team they're playing all year is Kansas City and Dallas. That's it. So are they going to be battle tested? Does it matter? I don't know. I lean that it does. So, you want to reserve more with the Dolphins. I want to reserve more with the Lions. We'll revisit this in the weeks to come.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the Dolphins, they're going to be going up against the Eagles this weekend. I believe Eagles are favored in this one as they are at home on Sunday Night Football. Hopefully we will have a much better experience than we did with the Bills and Giants. It was a compelling game toward the end, but certainly felt a little bit frustrating at times. It always does when you have a backup quarterback, even one as experienced as Tyrod Taylor. Um, so we've got a pretty close one. I think we've got, like I already said with the DVOA, we've got the top offense in the league with the Miami Dolphins going up against a Eagles team that solid up front, solid in the front seven. Their secondary, though, has not been nearly as good as it was last year, and that is a bad kind of function when you're going up against Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So,
Mm-hmm.
Kamen, do you think that the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to outgun the Philadelphia Eagles and pull out a win? Or do you think we're going to see something kind of similar to what we've had with Detroit, or not Detroit, but with Miami so far this season, where going up against tougher defenses, tougher teams, they look a little bit more mortal than they usually do?
All right. So first off, Gail Monfils, tennis parlay, cash it in, baby. That hits Tom. As for this game, it is a total toss-up. I just want to be clear. You know, we got to make a pick here, but it's like 50-50. It could go either way. Eagles are a 2-point favorite. I think they opened 2.5. We always say it's about 3 points. Goes to the home team. If this was on a neutral game, it'd be a pick 'em. If Miami not slightly favored, it is going to be tight. I think Miami has a better offense, a more explosive offense. Philadelphia, with their pass rush, a better defense overall. I mean, actually, their offense is also really good, though. The Eagles are kind of like the Chiefs. They're not finishing the drives enough. They're getting, more turnovers than usual, more field goals. Philadelphia actually second in the NFL in yards per game. They are at about 395, though. Miami, 499 yards a game. You kidding me? I know Broncos game skewed it a little bit, but that's a ridiculous amount of yards, which they moved the ball at will against Buffalo. It wasn't their offense that caused them problems. It was their defense. This is tight. A lot of it goes down to how much can that Eagles pass rush get to Tua. Because if they can pressure Tua, it could be big for them. If they can't, it's game over. Because Philadelphia 20th against the pass this year. Again, probably a little bit skewed because they're up in games. But 20th against the pass against the best passing team in the NFL, probably, with Tyreek Hill, who's probably the best receiver in the league. Jalen Waddle might be a top 5 receiver, if not top 10. What do they say about Tyreek and Jalen? You can't teach speed. They just have it, man. Mike McDaniel is an offensive genius. I've nicknamed him the mini Andy Reid. Although as good as Andy Reid is, the Chiefs have been messing around a little bit too much with the trick plays, getting a little bit too cutesy. I think Miami actually has better personnel to get cutesy on that team, and they do it very, very well. Their play design is so good that my girlfriend is watching NFL Red Zone. She's like, hey, that was a cool play. Did you see what Miami did there to fake them out? I'm like, yeah, that's what Miami does. They scheme like geniuses. So this is tough, Tom. Again, I've went back and forth with this pick so many times. Cannot understate this enough. I am obsessed with the fact that we have Jalen Hurts and Tua. Let's not forget about what happened in college football. Jalen Hurts had lost, one or two games as a starting quarterback in college football. Gets taken out at a halftime of the national championship game against Georgia. They put in Tua, who was a freshman at the time. Tua balls out, gets him the national title game, and Jalen Hurts ever classy after that. Jalen Hurts actually gets dumped, though, for Tua. He transfers to Oklahoma after sitting at Alabama for a year, not even whining or anything. Actually was key in the SEC championship game. Jalen Hurts has gotten so much better since then. Tua is still as great as he was back then, even better, perhaps. These are two former teammates, two very classy guys, two guys I really like, two guys I really want to see succeed. I really do, because I think both of these guys have been counted out by many people, and they have been proving the haters wrong. So I love this matchup of quarterbacks. I really like the receivers on both teams, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I
Hmm.
think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are just a little bit better, though. Like, I think Hill is better than Brown. Waddle, a little bit better than Devontae Smith, a little bit better at the NFL level, at least. But those are former teammates as well. There are just so
Hmm.
many dynamics, like
Oh yeah,
so many dynamics between
it
these
is
two
worthy
teams.
of Sunday Night Football.
This
Absolutely.
is maybe the best game so far. I know Miami Buffalo as well was up there,
Yeah,
on
but
the
that
football
became they
schedule.
Buffalo made that not interesting
They
pretty quick.
did. But
Yeah.
Buffalo was weird. Buffalo should have lost against the Giants. Hashtag PI. Darren Waller getting held. Talk about soft penalties. That was actually more egregious than the ones in the Browns Niners game. I'll say that
Hmm.
much. But I'm going to lean Miami. Just because, I'm a Miami fan.
Sure.
That's been my adopted team. It's hard for that not to peek in when I think it's two evenly matched teams. But the biggest thing for me is that I don't think the Philadelphia secondary matches up well enough against Miami's passing attack. 20th in pass defense, too much explosiveness for Miami. I think this is the game. I think a lot of folks, including myself, wanted the Buffalo game to be like, hey, this is the game. We're for real. We'll show out. I think
Hmm.
this is the game for them. Something to think about, too, is how are they playing going into the game? Because Philadelphia, like you said, I think they're going to get better, but they're coming off the worst game they've played in the last 2 years. I know Miami's defense hasn't looked great, but if you look at Miami's defense the last few years, Tom, they're a very opportunistic defense. They get a lot of turnovers. If Philadelphia is going to be handing out turnovers all of a sudden like they never used to, Miami might be feasting.
Hmm.
And I think Philadelphia is great against the run. They match up really well against the Niners, I think. I think Miami's a little bit more of a tougher matchup. So give me the Dolphins to win by maybe a field goal. We do have a work confidence pool thing I do at work with my team there. And it's the same thing as the college one you and I and Drew do, where we put
Hmm.
1 to 10 confidence points. Instead, it's 1 to 15, 1 to 16, 14, 13, however many games there are that week. This one might be my 1 or 2 confidence point one. But I got to go with my adopted team. Let's go,
Hmm.
Miami.
There you go. I mean, I'm going to go with the Eagles
I
on the
figured.
opposite. I can't just let you have, both of us go the same way on this one. And because I do have legitimate concerns about whether or not this is going to be a quote unquote get right game for the Philadelphia offense. I mean, we look at what happened to Miami's defense against Buffalo, what happened to it against the LA Chargers. I mean, even going up against the Panthers this past week, I mean, they were down pretty quick pretty early, and of course they have the firepower to come back. But the Panthers defense, this is not. I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure up front. Jalen Carter has been otherworldly as a rookie defensive tackle, rotating in that dynamic front that the Eagles have. I know that they're a little bit banged up, both on that front four and in the back four or back five, as most teams are in nickel most of the time these days. Um, but I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think are a more well-rounded team, and I think they're quite simply just all around a more talented team. And that's something where Miami has kind of like bumped their head against the ceiling a little bit. I mean, they were in a close one against the Chargers, like I mentioned, losing to the Bills. Their other wins have been, Broncos, Giants, Panthers. I mean, none of those teams really excite or inspire confidence. Patriots, the same thing. That was a 7-point win. I mean, on the road in a short week. So there's some caveats there, but we've seen them beat not great competition to middling competition, but against, one of the top teams, the Bills, and now the Eagles, another road game. This is going to be a huge, huge litmus test for the Miami Dolphins in determining, are they going to jump up, for me at least, are they going to jump up in that Super Bowl contender ranking? And then it's the same thing for the Eagles. This is a prove it week of, are you guys going to stay there or are you going to drop down? Because, I mean, the Jets, outside of their quarterback position, are pretty legit as far as talent goes. That was something where
Yeah.
that's why they made the Aaron Rodgers move this season. And Zach Wilson has been doing just enough to keep them in games, and their defense, quite frankly, picking off Jalen Hurts 3 times, putting on pressure with their own front. Um, Miami doesn't have that kind of engine power on defense. So we're going to see if the Eagles are able to figure some things out this week. But for me, I'm favoring the Eagles at home on Sunday Night Football in this one, but definitely going to be a must tune in, a must watch game. Probably, like you said, biggest, best game of the season so far.
And
I
it's
mean,
on
maybe if you
prime
want to put
time.
the opener
Like
up there.
the other one was not a
Absolutely,
primetime
yes.
game. Just to clarify too, Tom, that Jets defense made Mahomes look bad, made Josh Allen look bad, made Jalen Hurts look bad. There's a graphic.
No joke.
I don't know it, but it's like 8 or 9 turnovers and like 2 touchdowns passing allowed against those 3 quarterbacks who were the top 3 quarterbacks in MVP voting last season. The Jets are no joke. If Rodgers was there, we might be talking about them as a Super Bowl contender. Even if he's past his prime, certainly better than Zach Wilson. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's a litmus test game. For me, I'll say this about Miami's defense. Again, week 1 against the Chargers, that was a healthy Chargers team. All their pieces were there. We've seen if Herbert, if Williams, if Allen, if Eckler are all healthy, all clicking. That's not necessarily – I know obviously you don't want to give up that many points, but giving up that many points against the Chargers and Bills, those are 2 of the top 5 best offenses in the league if they're clicking. So –
Eagles are the same way. We'll see if the Eagles get clicking.
So it'll be very, very fun to watch. Hoping that I'm right and you're wrong. I will not have this game on betting locks of the week though, because I am not that confident on it.
Yeah,
I know I've been going with Miami a lot on betting locks and winning. This one I'm going to hold off for betting locks of the week.
But maybe a little side action there. Moving on to college football, we've got a huge matchup, one that we hope is as good as last week's huge conference matchup was. We'll be touching on Washington and Oregon in a little bit, but right now we're looking ahead to Ohio State and Penn State. Is it the Big House or is that Michigan? I'm not super familiar.
It's the Big House.
It's
Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State, Penn State. It's at Ohio State.
Right. So Big House is in Michigan. I always get that mixed up because Ohio State also has a huge capacity with their stadium.
Yes, they do.
But Ohio State has already a significant win over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this season. Ryan Day was quite passionate about that,
And he was right. He was right.
And now gets another tough matchup against a Penn State team that has looked pretty legit, but doesn't quite have the same level of bona fides. I'm pulling up their schedule really quickly.
Honestly, neither team does. I mean, Ohio State's got the Notre Dame one, which was great. Penn State has Iowa, which was a nice win, but not as good. They both had one test, and they both passed. But the other games have been cupcakes.
Yeah, I mean, at this point of the college season, with the way scheduling goes, you can really only ask for having some sort of litmus test. I mean, we saw Notre Dame right where they rank. They're below Ohio State, but perhaps a decent bit better than USC. So this is going to be a game that's really a prove it, and probably the biggest maybe second biggest college football game so far this year. Because again, Washington, Oregon was huge until we get
Alabama
Michigan
too,
and but that's not in conference.
Those aren't in conference. Texas, Oklahoma was big too.
Yeah, but not as big.
It's one of the biggest. I mean, that's fire.
Because I'm taking like ranking and everything into it as well. So Ohio State favored a bit as they are at home. Does James Franklin have it in his team to pull an upset on the road here? Or do you think Ohio State is going to continue rolling this season?
I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. They're number 3 in the country, 6-0. Penn State's number 7, 6-0 as well. My gut feeling says that they're going to not only win, but cover. They're a 4-point favorites, which I actually think that's a little bit low. It is a litmus test like we're both talking about. Penn State, 1 ranked win, 31-0 over number 24 Iowa. Ohio State, 1 ranked win on the last play of the game with 1 extra player, winning 17-14, or it was technically the second to last play, but just about the last play of the game, winning 17-14 at Notre Dame. This is 2 amazing defenses. Number 2 and number 3 in the country in points allowed per game. Penn State, number 2, allowing about 8 points per game. Ohio State, number 3, allowing about 9.7 points a game. Great at the line of scrimmage, offensive line, defensive line. I like Ohio State because I think they're more explosive. They have a better offense. They have a more explosive passing game. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., the top receiver in college football, talent-wise. There's some other good players on that team as well. About 308 pass yards per game for Ohio State. Penn State about 223 passing yards a game. They haven't had to pass the ball, but Penn State, their offense runs over the other team. They're a running team, Tom. They're not going to be able to run over Ohio State. You cannot do that against Ohio State. There is way too much talent. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is, the most talented player in this game. But Travion Henderson, the running back, same thing as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Speed kills. You can't teach it. There's so many explosive playmakers. And their quarterback, who was relatively inexperienced, he showed me something in a Notre Dame game. The last drive, coming up clutch, winning the game for his team. I like Ohio State. They looked really good against Notre Dame on defense. Their team looked really good, and Notre Dame's defense is amazing. Just ask Caleb Williams. He got picked off 3 times against them in the first half. So I don't think it's any shame for them to only score 17 points on the road in that game. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not seen much of Penn State. I have seen Ohio State on a couple occasions. Every time I've seen them, I've been very impressed. It's a little bit more my gut. I mean, obviously, I've got the stats, the passing yards, the talented players. So it's by no means a blind guess. But my gut feeling says at home Ohio State, which neutral game, it says, what, a 1-point favorite on neutral field? I feel like that 4-point line is almost disrespectful against Ohio State. I think they win by a touchdown or more in this game. Give me the Buckeyes over Penn State.
I don't know if it's going to be by a touchdown or more, but I will also go with the Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, like you said, their defenses are really, really good, pretty evenly matched. We've seen Kyle McCord, prove it a bit against a really strong Notre Dame defense, a defense that kind of put Caleb Williams to shame a little bit. I mean, Drew Aller, of course, is no slouch for the Penn State Nittany Lions either. He has not thrown a pick so far this season, as he's completed, I'm not great at math, but he's completed a lot of passes. I don't know what his completion percentage is, but 12 touchdown passes. There's a lot of good talent there. For me, it is the top end talent that wins it out for Ohio State. I mean, Travion Henderson, their top running back. You mentioned Marvin Harrison. Of course, he's going to be a top 2 or 3 pick in the NFL draft. But also, Emeka Egbuka was out with an injury past week. He's also really super talented.
He looked really good against Notre Dame.
We'd be talking about him a lot more if Marvin Harrison Jr. weren't on this team. This is the latest case or the latest iteration of, just the amazing Ohio State Buckeyes wide receivers making their quarterback look good, making their team look good. This is one where if everything's relatively evenly balanced, I'm going to go with the slight edge to the skill position players. It is going to be interesting to see defensively what happens, though, with each of these units, as you said, really strong in the trenches. I mean, Penn State, Olu Fashanu, their left tackle, he could have been a top 5, top 10 draft pick last year if he wanted to declare. Instead, came back to Penn State and, of course, has continued to be fantastic at left tackle for them. So, that could be something where you have a strong enough offensive line, you might be able to neutralize, maybe run a bit of clock, especially like you're saying, with Penn State being more of a running team. That's where I think this one's going to be pretty close, simply because there's not going to be as many possessions for the superior skilled players for Ohio State to really make a huge difference in this game. So I'm also going Ohio State, closer than a touchdown, though. I think I'd be surprised if it were more than that. Minus if it's like a garbage time, field goal puts them behind. I think it's going to be a close 1 possession game, pretty tight most of the way.
And just to clarify, Tom, the whole Caleb Williams, Justin Fields thing is something that I do want to talk about on the show, but I want to reserve it because we've already talked about it before.
Sure.
And we'll revisit this ad nauseum. I know we talked about Caleb Williams the last show, but Justin Fields, man, tough injury for him. So we'll see what the Bears
could do. To paraphrase
the
dude, and I'll keep it clean, new stuff has come to light. New information has come to light as far as that conversation goes. But speaking of close in-conference games, again, of top 10 teams. I don't know why my words are not working today, but we saw a missed field goal ultimately determine the Washington-Oregon game this past week. The Huskies pulling it out over the Ducks. So that definitely, I mean, both teams, I believe, are still in the top 10. Oregon just in the top 10, ranked ninth overall. But definitely this shows the Huskies to be a very legitimate playoff contender this year, Kamen. So basically, are they the top team to beat in the Pac-12? Do you think that there is any chance that they're going to fall now that they are past this Oregon tough matchup? And do you think that they're actually legitimate to win in the playoffs? I think, barring any sort of letdown, they'll be making it in this postseason.
Yeah, I think just on the outside looking in, again, this is the way too early rankings. It is 6, 7 weeks into college football.
Mhm.
I know that seems like we're halfway there, but we're actually barely starting conference play. So a
Sure.
lot of these teams, I mean, we know Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, these programs get a new batch of talent, and it takes a little bit of time to figure things out. So this could change in the next few weeks, but just on my general impression right now, this might be the most wide open college football playoff field that we've ever seen.
Undoubtedly,
I
yes.
think there's not a team that you look at that they're like, that team is invincible. I mean, Georgia has played several close games. They've pulled
Hmm.
away late, but they've played in several close games this year. They are definitely not unbeatable this year. So Washington absolutely could contend for a national title. The Pac-12 is the best conference right now, not the SEC. I mean, it's close again. A lot of tough teams, but they've got the most ranked teams, I believe.
Hmm.
And they got some awesome, awesome football teams. And Washington right now looks like the best one. I mean, Washington and Oregon, very, very evenly matched, as you saw. Washington was at home, but they got through that hurdle. Michael Penix Jr. is the Heisman favorite, and he should be. Sixth-year senior, a former Indiana quarterback. He is actually second in the nation in passing yards, but he's first in passing yards per game. Shedeur Sanders from Colorado played one extra game. So actually, Penix will be probably first in passing yards soon. He's up there in quarterback rating, up there in touchdown passes. Statistically speaking, he is miles better than he was at Indiana, which shows you what happens when you get some targets, right? He was too good to be a Hoosier in football. He's a lefty. I love a good lefty quarterback. There's so few of them. Penix Jr. throws a beautiful ball. I think Washington already beat Oregon. They got that head-to-head matchup. USC is terrible on defense. Just terrible. It's easy to get excited about Caleb Williams. They got Jerry Rice's kid. The running back's really good. They got a great coach, Lincoln Riley, great offensive mind. They can put up points. But as you saw in the USC game, it's kind of like the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. You always talk about this, Tom. Josh Allen is asked to be perfect. He's asked to do too much. Caleb Williams is kind of the same way at USC, and it usually works. But against a great team, a great defense like Notre Dame, we saw USC falter. Washington's not great on defense. I mean,
Hmm.
the Pac-12 kind of reminds me of the old school Big 12, where it's all about points. Everyone's great at offense, and defense is just lacking a little bit. But they
Yeah.
are considerably better than USC. Like, I mean, USC's given up 40 points, every other game against a good team. Washington, closer to that 20-point mark. Against Oregon, giving up in the 30s against an Oregon team that was scoring about 50 a game. So Washington's defense is respectable enough, better than USC's, at least on par with Oregon. I mean, you look at their schedule, they got USC on the schedule. They are at home against Utah. They play at Oregon State, who I need to see Oregon State play because Oregon State has not been a football powerhouse in a long time since Chad Johnson was wide receiver way back in the day when we were
Hmm.
just little kids. So I don't know enough about Oregon State, but on the top of my head, I feel like they can beat Oregon State. I've watched a lot of USC time. I've tried to watch USC a lot just because Caleb Williams is such a big player. Their defense is atrocious. They're just a better football team because USC has that glaring weakness. And then, of course, Utah has not looked as good as last year. So yeah, Washington, retro of their win against Oregon, is the team to beat in the Pac-12. Looks like the best conference. So yeah,
Mhm.
100%. They're a legitimate national title contender. I've got them in the playoff. They could probably afford to lose a game. I talk about 3 tough games on the
Maybe.
schedule. They could probably afford to lose a game as long as they win the conference championship. But they lose the game. Maybe they're not in the
Where we
conference
might be
championship.
having an Oregon rematch there, because the interesting thing with the
Yeah.
schedule in the Pac-12 is that both Oregon and Washington are all facing Oregon State. They're all facing USC, and what's the other one that's ranked? I just had it.
And USC, by the way, their loss against Notre
Utah.
Dame, if they do figure it out, that's a
Hmm.
non-conference loss. So USC could still make the national championship game too, by
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
way. But
I
I
mean,
like
I
Washington the
doubt that.
best out of that bunch. I actually watched some of that Oregon game. I was very impressed with Washington and the
Hmm.
way they looked because they were up, then they got hit by Oregon. They were down. Then they came back and won at the end. I know there was a missed field goal, but before that, Washington had a game-winning drive before that play. So that's a team that can respond. They faced adversity in that game. They won a close game, which is going to be very important because they're going to play a lot of close games in this
Hmm.
conference and in the playoff as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So definitely, Washington is a contender. They have that inside track. I mean, currently they're ranked 5th, but this is the sort of thing where obviously they win out, somebody's going to lose between Michigan and Ohio State, which can create a bit of an opening there, as you're going to have that head-to-head matchup, and also that then determines who's going to be playing in the Big Ten Conference Championship. And I know the committee's supposed to pick, the best teams or whatever, but again, if you don't have a conference championship, if you don't even play in the conference championship game, I find that to be a bit difficult to justify putting you over somebody who might have a loss, even if it is in the conference championship, such as Washington perhaps losing to Oregon. I mean, that might be the sort of thing where maybe
I
then
disagree
Oregon
with
vaults
that,
in.
but I have a very different
I know.
philosophy because
The
I'm in the put the 4 best teams in no matter what. But I
Yeah.
see where your point,
I mean,
it is a
in a
valid point.
year in a year like this where it's not, I mean, like looking at the top 10, it feels like an actual true top 10 where any of these teams could be viable, legitimate teams. It's not that there's, okay, we've got the top 3, somebody's fighting for 4, or maybe there's a top 5 and who's going to jockey for
Yeah.
position there.
That's
Like you
true.
said, this is
And
as
Notre
wide
Dame's
open
got
as
2
it's ever been.
losses, and they lost on the last play against
Hmm.
Ohio State. So they're not even in the top 10. I don't think they are. Maybe the latest. I got to
They
look up their.
are
I think they're out.
15th.
They're outside of it. Yeah. So I
Hmm.
mean, even Notre Dame we saw could play with Ohio State, who is
Sure.
3rd in the country. So 100% agree with the whole parity in college football right now.
Absolutely, and a place where there is a little bit of parity, perhaps. Although we look at last year's World Series, and we've got 2 of those teams returning, so how much is that really worth? We've got the Astros and the Rangers in a Texas State showdown, and then we're going coast to coast with the Philadelphia Phillies and the Arizona Diamondbacks in the respective championship series. So let's start with Texas. Let's go for the Astros and Rangers series. As you mentioned, Kamen, that's already 2-0 in the Texas Rangers' favor. Oddly enough, I know a lot of people expecting the World Series champions to be leading in the series, but we've got a little bit of a different shakeup. This now heads back to Arlington, where Houston has been pretty dominant in the Rangers building. So, is this the type of series, Kamen, where you see that the Astros can grab a couple of road games, even up the series, regain home field advantage for the back 3 on this? Or do you think that the Rangers are going to, perhaps sweep, perhaps just kind of even the series at home if they're able to split? I would count that as a massive win, because if you can get to 3-0 or 3-1 in a series, that's a pretty significant hill to overcome. What do you kind of look for in this series and picking, who's ultimately going to win? I think we're both going to lean the same way on both of these, simply because with the information we have,
It's
2
2-0.
wins stashed in the bank is
Yeah.
a huge, huge advantage. Do you think, maybe it could even be who's more likely to make it a series? Who's more likely to try to pull off an upset between the Astros and the Diamondbacks here?
So first off, I want to put this asterisk. Anything that it comes to baseball, you can claim to be an expert. There is
Mhm.
not one single person in the world that can definitively have any confidence in picking anything when it comes to the baseball playoffs. It is absolutely wide open. The 5 best teams in the MLB this year, record-wise, combined for one playoff win. One playoff win by 1 run. It was almost a lucky playoff win with the play at the end there in the Braves-Phillies game. So just, look, if you claim to be a baseball expert, get out of here. Anything can happen in any of these games. The baseball playoffs are completely wide open. I've got all sorts of solutions to fix them, which I'll talk about in Statement of the Week. But starting with, there is one thing that I do know when it comes to baseball playoffs. You got to be playing your best ball at the right time. Right now, the Rangers and the Phillies are playing so amazing that just because we have to make a pick, again, unpredictable, we have to make a pick. I'm going to say it's not going to be a series in either series. Can the Astros get 1 game? They're the more likely team because it's the Astros. They won the World Series. They've been here. They've done that. They have a great team. They can do it. Sure, the Diamondbacks can do it. They can do it. I don't think either team wins more than 1. I think we're looking at a sweep or 4 out of 5, a very, very calm series in both sides of things. I'll start with the Rangers Astros because that's what I've written down first. The Rangers have yet to lose a playoff game. So how can I bet against a team that hasn't lost yet in the playoffs? I can't. In fact, I'm going to probably bet for them today, if I'm being honest. Rangers tying last year's Astros team for the second best start to a playoff run with 7 straight wins, 1 win off tying the 2014 Royals, who had 8 straight. Rangers are so on fire right now, and that's despite arguably their best pitcher. He's not even pitched yet. Max Scherzer, pitching today, by the way, who's got tons of playoff experience, World Series champion, and actually, really their other best pitcher isn't even on the playoff roster. And if we want to go there, and it hasn't mattered. Nathan Eovaldi's looked amazing in the playoffs. They have a very solid rotation. Montgomery's looked good. Great lineup. Speaking of playoff experience, Corey Seager, former World Series champion. He was one of the key players. I think he was it World Series MVP, ALCS MVP? Corey Seager was a massive part of those Dodger playoff runs. They got Garcia as well on the bats. They've proven they can win games any way. 3-2, 5-4, 2-0, 11-8, 7-1, 7-1. This team is just clicking on all cylinders. They are way too hot right now. I don't think anything's going to cool them off, not even the Houston Heat. I think Max Scherzer shows up today. I think the Rangers take a 3-0 lead, and I would lean on a sweep. I really would. They look so good right now, Tom. So give me the Rangers over the Astros. I don't think it's going to be close, but I love to bet on sports. I've been doing really well lately on football, college football, soccer, tennis. I stopped betting baseball just because I've lost so many bets on baseball. So I would say take it with the asterisk. Maybe you fade me, but my gut feeling says Texas easy against Houston in this series.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I've learned about the Houston Astros, it's as much as I don't like them, I got to respect them in the baseball that they play. I'm not willing to count them entirely out. I could see them pulling off, a Game 7 win against Texas. I don't think it's particularly likely. But of the two teams for pulling an upset, I think the Astros are definitely talented enough, experienced enough. I mean, they've got Hall of Fame manager in Dusty Baker at the helm. I mean, people argue how much a manager is really worth, but I mean, he's got bona fides of being in the postseason for like 4 or 5 different teams. Excuse me, over his managerial career. I do like Texas, though. Both on the field and off the field. So up 2-0 is huge right now, and they've talked about how they've had this bugaboo with the Houston Astros coming in, owning their building. I mean, part of that is that For the past couple of years, the Rangers haven't been a particularly good baseball team in general. So I imagine a lot of teams have been coming in there and owning their building. But the Rangers, now more so than ever, I mean, we're going to talk about Hall of Fame managers Bruce Bochy as well
Yeah,
in his
no doubt.
dugout. I mean, I'm also going to go with the Rangers on this one and talk in greater detail a bit later on in the program as to why I'm so bullish on them, why I'm enjoying what they're doing. And I'm also enjoying what the Philadelphia Phillies are doing as well. World Series runners up last season as a wild card team. They improved by what was like 1-2 wins in the win column this year as they got another wild card spot. But it's really hard to not like the way that they've been playing in the playoffs, the way that is it Charlie Manuel, I believe is his name. The way that he's been managing the team has been fantastic. And quite frankly, this is where we're seeing the difference in talent really show up between the Phillies and the Diamondbacks. I mean, we can talk about the talent chasm between the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers to be sure, but the Dodgers pitching staff, let's face it, it was kind of running on fumes. And the difference, and I'm sure you're going to be touching on this in your statement of the week, the difference of having a high-powered offense over the course of 162 is very different from having that same offense with that variance compressed down into a 5-game series. To have just a couple of games, a couple of at-bats for your star players, where on the flip side of things, if you don't have strong starting pitching and you don't have, again, the aggregate run differential that your offense can bail you out on any given July, June, August type of day, when it comes down to this really, really compressed time of year, not having great pitching, or just even having great pitching that has an off day, hello, Clayton Kershaw, that can be something that really sinks your team, that really sinks a playoff season. So the Diamondbacks were able to run hot against a division rival to get here. Problem is they're running against a team that's running even hotter in the Philadelphia Phillies. And of course, like I said, with the World Series experience, they have the talent, they have the know-how to win this series. And I think they're, if we're talking sweep, I think it's more likely that this is the sweep than the Texas series, I think, is a sweep. So I like the Phillies coming out of this one, definitely.
Yeah, I think the Phillies, it's what's that saying? Like the big shot Bob, Robert Ory in the playoffs, some guys that just seem to play better when the lights shine the brightest. One, of course, is Kyle Schwarber hitting 2 home runs yesterday. I'll have plenty more on his postseason home runs, but he is now tied for 7th all-time, Tom, in postseason home runs, tying Reggie Jackson for the most as a left-handed hitter. Bryce Harper, home run machine in the playoffs. Trey Turner, Castellanos, which he did barbecue me on a bet last night. It was the draft.
And there's a drive out to the left boot by Castellanos. It is 4-2 Reds.
Yeah, that too. That was really bad. But no, not related to that. But it was the plus 100 DraftKings boost to get a hit. It's that the 8th inning, the man's got his home run trot, crushes the ball. The way he reacts, you think it's a home run, but it's a fly out to the warning track. Did not actually get a hit in the last game, but he's getting plenty of home runs this series. The Phillies, by the way, the most home runs in the MLB postseason. Chicks dig the long ball. Well, the long ball results in wins, Tom. It definitely does because they've been winning a lot.
Ball go far, team go far.
Exactly. Their lineup is great. I mean, it's so great that Castellanos is the 7 hitter on that team. Craig Kimbrell. I was looking up some stats. He's top 10 all-time in career saves, Craig Kimbrell. He is one of the best closers ever. A guy the Cubs sorely missed at the end of the season this year. I know their closer got hurt, but that's why they blew it away. They couldn't make the playoffs at the end. But Kimbrell was a bona fide closer at the end. Their rotation is pitching their best ball at the right time. Philadelphia has an incredible team. They just won 10-0. Speaking of rolling, you cannot do better than 10-0. It shows that you hit the ball well. You also pitched well. Just a perfect win in game 2. Philadelphia is cruising. It's going to be the Phillies right back in the World Series. The only question is, who is going to win the World Series? I think you and I both have Texas and Philadelphia.
Hmm.
And actually, Tom, I'm going to get started. I'm going to go with Texas, which I think is what you're going to go with by the
Yep.
sound of it. There's just something special about the Rangers. They had a great offseason the last couple years. Actually, had a great. I know the Max Scherzer has been a little bit off this year, but I'm telling you, he's going to be key in that World Series.
Hmm.
Mizzou Tiger Max Scherzer, one of the best pitchers in baseball the last 10 years. If he has a couple huge starts in the World Series, they're going to remember that trade at the deadline. Corey Seager, a more recent addition. They made some more offseason moves, improved the lineup, improved the pitching staff. I think Texas has something special right now. I know it's tough to go against Philadelphia. I know they were there last year. I just think Texas is a little bit better right now, and they are playing a little bit better baseball at the moment. So I think it's more of a gut feeling because, again, baseball playoffs,
Hmm.
teams with the 5 best records this year, none of them are here. 1 playoff win combined. I cannot definitively say anyone's going to win, but it just, you get those vibes about Texas. Close games. They win with pitching. They win with hitting. Philadelphia is very, very dependent on the long ball, which works really, really well. But I think Texas in a non-long ball game, a 1-run game, something tells me I trust them more in that scenario. Give me the Rangers to win the World Series over the Phillies, who would then lose back-to-back World Series. I mean, Philadelphia does not do great in championship games in recent years.
Hmm.
Ask the Eagles, ask the Phillies. So give me the Rangers to win it all.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of heartbreak no matter who loses this series. And I truly would be watching a Rangers Phillies World Series for pure enjoyment because I would be happy, quite frankly, with either team that wins in this scenario because they both are so easy to root for. I mean, we look at basketball and at football and we see superstars playing like superstars, and it's really hard for that to happen in baseball simply because no guarantee you're going to make it the postseason. Hello, Mike Trout. And even when you get there, there's no guarantee that you're going to have that same opportunity, particularly as a hitter, that you're going to have the same opportunity because they can pitch around you. Like you can't, as a hitter, you're not controlling the at bat the same way that a pitcher controls an at bat. So to see Bryce Harper play the way that he plays makes it really fun to watch him, and it makes the Phillies really fun to watch as well. I am with you. I am leaning the Texas Rangers on this one ever so slightly. But I mean, we're looking at 2 teams that have the same win-loss record, that are fairly close, I think, in run differential. I just closed out the tab that had that, but I mean, it would be 2 very evenly matched teams with 2 pretty evenly matched managers. Probably a slight edge to the Rangers on that one, but certainly a lot of fun to see. So I've also got the Rangers winning their first World Series in franchise history. If they lose, that's another heartbreaker right there,
Wow,
as they
that's
came
that's
really, really
cool.
close. Um, but yeah, that wraps up our baseball talk for now. It sounds like we're both going to be addressing baseball additionally a little bit later on in the program. But on to locks of the week, where, as you mentioned, Common, we were slightly apart. I think I had the wrong line on that Broncos Bears game, which is why you were even. I had it at the Bovada line, which is 3.5. If I remember correctly, you had it a little bit better, where you were able to find it and got the split. But yeah, we crashed and burned a little bit.
Yeah, so just to clarify on the Broncos line, the closing line was also 3.5, but I look at all sorts of different
Got that
betting
little dip.
apps.
Yep.
On the
Worth to shop
show,
around.
I did shop around. I had Broncos -3 on the show, which was what the DraftKings line was at the time of the segment. We did have a bye week last week, so yes, we're talking about a game that happened a couple weeks ago. So no show last week. So I did get a wash on the Broncos -3. It was the first week all season I was under 500. I was 3-0, 2-1, getting used to the winning life, and then life hit me hard that week. I got a push on the Broncos line. I had the Dolphins +3 against the Bills. I've been winning a lot on Miami all year. Did not win on this bet. Bills winning 48-20. I had the Cardinals +14 at the Niners. It was 35-16. And that was a 19-point spread. The Cardinals were in the red zone with less than a minute to go. I think they were inside the 15-yard line looking for the garbage time touchdown to backdoor cover, and they couldn't get it, Tom. So 0-2-1 this week. I am 6-5-1 on the season, 6 wins, 5 losses, and then 1 push. Over 500, which is still good, Tom. Still good. I would have went 2-1 last week had we done picks. I had a lot of money on the Niners covering against the Cowboys, and they did cover. They covered big time. So kind of bad timing not to have the show last week. You were 1-2. You had the Packers plus 1.5 against the Lions. Lions winning 34-20.
Not bad.
-2 with the Titans. Titans winning 27-3. That was tough. Bengals figuring it out maybe a week or two later than what you were picking, because they have started trending in the right direction. You did get one that was easy money. Seahawks -1 at the Giants. Seahawks winning 24-3. You are 1-2. You're 6-6 on the year. Even 500. What do you got for us this week, Tom?
So this week was tough because there's a lot of things. There are a lot of lines that are so close. I could pick them, one way or the other. But for the sake of the show, we're going to roll with this one. I am going to go with Jaguars +1 on Thursday Night Football. This is going to be a bit of a risky play because we don't know the extent to which Trevor Lawrence's knee is holding up. He had a limited practice, but of course, they're not running full practices on short weeks like this. So it'll be interesting to see. New Orleans has a really, really tough defense. We'll see if they're figuring some things out on offense as well. But give me the Jaguars +1.
You all right?
I'm starting to do like my best Patrick Mahomes impression there.
What are you drinking there, Tom?
Just water.
Oh, good.
Gotta keep hydrated. Really important to do that. But Jaguars +1 this week. Give me the Baltimore Ravens -3 against Detroit. I think that this is going to be, it's on the road where Goff is not necessarily as good. Their big bell cow running back, David Montgomery, might not be
Bear,
playing
baby,
with a rib injury. Current member of my dynasty football team, which is nice. If he's healthy, it's nice. Lamar Jackson.
Keep going to him the way they're going to him. I don't know if they're doing to make the change to Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll see.
Well, and this might be the opportunity for the Lions to do that, to incorporate him a little bit more into the game plan if David Montgomery is out and if Gibbs, of course, is able to go. But give me the Ravens -3. Detroit's defense has been playing a lot better, but this one's going to be outdoors on the road. And the Ravens playing pretty well throughout this season, so I'll take them. And then let's go with, we're back to fading the Bears now. Justin Fields out I think he's technically listed as doubtful. They haven't declared him out, but you don't dislocate your flipping thumb on your throwing hand and then play the next week. I mean, if you think about what's the most important digit for throwing a football, this has to be the most important simply because you got a grip. So we're going to see somebody by the name of Tyson Bagent, undrafted Division II rookie, a rookie from Division II who's going to be playing on Sunday this week. The Raiders, they might even be without Jimmy G. I don't really care about all that. Brian Hoyer is a representative quarterback at the NFL level. We have no idea what to expect of Tyson Bagent. And the Bears have been up and down regardless this season on whether or not they actually want to game plan good offenses, but I'm not going to get going off on that tangent. Raiders -3 against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about it. I think we could talk about the Justin Fields thing every single week. So again, I'm trying to be
Bear fans,
pick my places when to discuss it. But just on that topic, I think I agree with you. It's too early to rush him back this week. But I think Justin Fields and the Bears both, it's in their interest to get him back out there as soon as they can. Because I think he needs to prove himself to the Bears and to other teams should he get traded. Sure. And the Bears really have to find out because it's been, all these downs. Then he plays great 2 weeks in a row. And then he kind of backtracked again this last week against the Vikings, even prior to the injury.
It was dreadful. That
So
was dreadful to
yeah,
I wasn't even watching. I was working this past Sunday, but just to like look at everything that happened, it was like that was just dreadful. I'm almost glad that I had to work on Sunday.
yeah.
Almost glad.
Well, I'm going to be
Coming.
off work soon on Sunday's upcoming
There you
schedule.
go.
I'll
What
be
do you have?
watching the Bears misery more closely. Although I'll probably be watching Red Zone honestly because that beats the Bears.
Hmm.
But
Everybody
yeah,
does.
cannot wait to see what Tyson does. Cannot wait to see what happens with Fields when he comes back. You know,
I
I'm a
I
believer
can.
in let's get Caleb Williams, but again, we can discuss this any week on the show. So
Hmm.
we'll pick our places. I'm gonna go. I was gonna start with my college football line, but I'm
Go
gonna
for it.
end with it instead because I
Mm.
want to get into the fact that we have an opposite pick on locks of the week.
Oh, I
You
know.
kidding
I'm
me?
already punching it in. I know what it is.
Which one do you think it is?
Oh, it's Lions +3, no doubt.
Yes. Yes, it is. Lions +3. Like you, Tom, there was a lot of 2 and 3 point spreads that it could go either way. This was one of the toughest locks of the week picks for me, going into this season. I am going to go Lions +3 because I think the Lions are a better football team, 5-1 against the 4-2 Ravens. Having the 3 points that are on the comfort makes me feel good. Baltimore has struggled in close games. They've struggled in the fourth quarter. I think this will be a close game. Their offense has not been very explosive. It's kind of like what I was thinking when, we hyped up Zay Flowers and OBJ. And Zay Flowers actually has been pretty good, but he's still
Mhm,
not, Justin Jefferson. And Odell Beckham certainly is not Randy Moss. I think he's more on the over the hill side of things.
mhm,
There was way too much talk about Baltimore's offense. They had a couple running back injuries. I know that set them back. But I don't think this offense is explosive enough compared to the Lions offense. I think Detroit's got more playmakers. They got another one in Jamison Williams. So yeah, they lose Montgomery, but they have good options. Gibbs is, barely a drop off, if at all. I think they added a player in Williams. They've got, obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown's a great receiver. I think the Lions have a better offense. They've got a better football team. I'm not so concerned about the home road splits of Jared Goff. I know you are, but we'll
mhm.
see.
It's a
Again, a good
factor, yeah.
litmus test on the road. But I think Detroit's going to win the game outright. I'm not super confident in that, but if I'm picking them
Mhm.
outright and I'm going to get 3 points added in, absolutely. Give me Detroit +3 on the road at Baltimore this Sunday. So this next one I was struggling with. I had several different things written down. Ultimately, I stuck on the Browns -2 at the Colts. The Browns have the number one defense in the NFL in yards per game allowed. It's something like they're the top 4 in the last 50, 60 years in the NFL. In the modern passing era, this team is allowing just 200 yards per game, 60 yards less than the second closest defense. They're allowing 15 points per game. The Colts are just okay at offense. Gardner Minshew is just okay. No Anthony Richardson. They haven't really incorporated Jonathan Taylor the way they were expecting them to. I know Moss has been great at running back. I think he's been overachieving a little bit personally. So I think the Cleveland Browns defense is going to feast against the Colts in this game. I
Mhm.
think the Browns win outright. 2 points is very low. I think they can win by a field goal or more. Kareem Hunt, by the way, he's been great in the backfield. Huge win against the Niners. Yes, the Niners got hurt. Yes, they missed the field goal at the end. Cleveland still showed up. They showed out. They won that game. Cleveland wins again at the Colts. Browns -2. Here is my most profitable bet the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks in a row, Tom, I have bet on the LSU football game over. Every single week, LSU over hits. They're amazing at offense. Maybe the best offense in the country. They are horrible at defense. In fact, in the history of college football, I don't think I've ever seen as much of a gap in how good an offense is and how good a defense, or how bad an offense, or excuse me, words are hard for me now. How great an offense is and how terrible the defense is. It's mind-boggling. You look at the good teams LSU has played. 45 points allowed against Florida State. 39 against Mizzou. I saw it in person. LSU has no defense. The only way they can do anything is if they get a turnover or if you get penalties. You look at the over-under is only 57.5 against Army. I know Army's not a great offense. I know they're a running team, but Army's also not a great defense. If they're out there giving up 29 against Syracuse, 27 against BC, LSU is averaging 45.3 points per game. That is the third best in the country. I think Army's going to give up more than 40 points easily in this game, Tom. And is LSU going to give up more than 18? I think so. 57.5. LSU averages 45 points, Tom. They also give up about 30 points a game. So the average LSU scoring game is 75 points per game. That's the average. We need 58 here. We need,
I think we'll get
math, 17 less than the average. It adds up to a lot of points. Over 60 points. I'm thinking something like, 45 to 20 LSU wins, a 65-point game. That one I feel the best about. I've bet it the last 3 weeks. Until LSU shows me that their over's not going to hit, I'm going to keep betting it because it works. It works.
Absolutely. Well, looking forward to what's hopefully going to be a 5-1 week for the pair of us. Or really, the best would be what would it be? 5-0-1.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if
if it's a 3-point game, we could break even on Ravens and Lions. So 5-0-1, that would be a nice happy
That's
way.
Fine.
But really, I want it to be 5-1 in my favor.
Okay,
Moving on to trivia. We'll try to breeze through this really quickly. I don't have anything. Do you have anything for trivia this week, Kamen?
I do. Yeah, okay. I do have something I love. It's a great trivia question. So Kyle Schwarber tied Reggie Jackson with 18 career home runs in the playoffs, most all-time by a left-handed hitter, tied for 7th all-time. Can you name the 6 guys with more playoff home runs than Kyle Schwarber and Reggie Jackson? Only 6 guys. And Schwarber could be number 1 all-time when it's all said and done, Tom.
Sure.
Maybe number 2.
There's a lot of... So first I'm just going to go with Babe Ruth.
Not Babe Ruth.
Not Babe Ruth, okay. Because I imagine the playoff format was a bit different.
Because he played less playoff games back in his era.
So that would be somebody who's in the playoffs like all the time. Chipper Jones for the Braves?
Not Chipper Jones.
Let's see, possibly.
There's a couple guys on here that are a little bit surprising. A couple guys that make a lot of sense.
Let's see. So it has to be somebody, like, it has to be good teams that are always in the playoffs. Would Gary Sheffield be on there?
Not Gary Sheffield. So I'm going to just start giving, I'm going to knock off the active guys. There's 2 active players on this list. The guy who was 2nd all-time and the guy that is 6th all-time. Active players. I'm going to go as far as telling you that one of them is still playing in the playoffs as we speak.
Okay.
It's actually a little surprising how many playoff home runs he has. Actually, both of them, honestly.
Wow. Well, before I get a non-active player, David Ortiz, is he on that list?
I knew you were going to guess David
He's a
Ortiz.
left-handed hitter. Yeah, but that obviously the other clues knock that out. Active player. Ooh, this is a tough one. There's 2 active players.
2nd all-time and 6th all-time in playoff career home runs. I think you should get one of them. I mean, he's playing here today. He'll be playing today.
Playing today.
Right? Yeah, they're playing today, yeah.
I forget which one was going today. It's either is it Phillies
Astros
and
Rangers. I'll go ahead and make
Astros
it
and
really easy
Rangers.
for you.
It's not helping overly much though, unfortunately,
Really?
because I'm blanking on who it would be. Not Jose Altuve?
It's Jose Altuve. 24 career
Wow.
playoff home runs, the second most in
Huh.
baseball history.
I mean, I know I guess he can go yard a good amount, but yeah, I don't really think of him as a big home run hitter. Okay, and then the other guy is still active, but not in the playoffs. Um,
Got former teammate of Altuve's.
Carlos Correa?
Nope. Probably the other guy that you would guess, maybe. I thought you would go Correa as well.
Yeah, because they were infield. That was the infield battery right there.
I think he
George
was
Springer.
George Springer. Yep, that's it. All right,
So
so
he
that,
was in the playoffs this year. Yeah, so
yeah.
those are the active guys. The inactive guys, like that's where I'm just kind of going down like the Hall of Famer list, like
All
maybe
right,
Edgar
so
Martinez.
I'll start with the guy that's in fifth. It's a guy that was recently active. One of the best players in baseball history. I would
Hmm.
say of anyone on
Oh,
this list, say that again.
Albert Pujols.
Yep, he's probably the
Albert
best
Pujols,
guy
is
on
that
this
it?
list.
Okay,
19 for Albert
probably. Yeah,
Pujols. The most famous is the one against the Astros for me. That was iconic.
yeah.
So Albert Pujols is fifth. And why don't we
Hmm.
just do it this way? 4, 3, 2, and 1. So I'll go with 4. So the guys that are 4 and 3
Hmm.
are guys who played in the playoffs every single year. Neither one is necessarily a power hitter. It's not that they're bad at it, but they're not power hitters. I
Right.
think they
So
just played so many seasons and they, again, showed up at a higher level in the playoffs.
that clues me into like Derek Jeter,
Derek Jeter
perhaps.
is fourth with 20. And this is, of all the guys on this list, obviously a great player.
Hmm.
This is hands down the worst player on this list. Derek Jeter's teammate, a guy that I loved watching, but of anyone that's in the top 7 or 8, he is the worst player on this list. I don't know if he's going to make the Hall of Fame. He might not make the Hall of Fame, Tom. I got to look up his numbers now. He was
Like
a
Jorge
mainstay,
Posada.
not Jorge Posada, teammate with Posada in Jeter.
Bernie Williams.
Bernie Williams, nicely done.
Yeah. Huh.
I'm looking
But
at
yeah,
Bernie Williams'
that's kind of with
career.
my Chipper Jones thing where it's just like he was in a lot of playoffs, but I guess also you want to be going deep into the playoffs.
Yeah,
So
he's
interesting. So
probably
now we've got
he's not 297 average, which is really good. 287 home runs,
mm,
2,300 hits.
yeah,
5-time
it's
All-Star.
that sounds like the Hall
He's
of
a very
very
good.
good. Yeah,
Yeah,
Hall of
Bernie
very good.
Williams. All
So
right,
that
so
leaves
Jeter is
numero
fourth,
uno.
Williams is third, Altuve is second, and then the guy that is first all time, 29 home runs in the postseason.
Mm.
This guy is great. He might be the most underrated player in baseball history, honestly. One of the best
Is it
players.
Hammer
We
and
grew up
Hank?
watching him.
Oh, we
Not
didn't
Hammer
go
and
Hall of
Hank. It's a guy that we watched.
Watch.
So not that one.
Hmm. One of the best players. We grew up watching him. Not a teammate of Gigi. It wouldn't be Manny Ramirez, would it?
It's Manny Ramirez.
Really? Oh, nice.
29 career postseason home runs.
There we go.
312 career average, 555 career home runs, 12-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, an absolute beast, the great Manny Ramirez.
All right. Well, we're gonna.
29. Altuve's close to 24, but he's pretty far ahead of the rest.
Yeah, and I mean Altuve getting up there a little. He might hold that for a while longer. But with the new
Yeah,
playoff format, more guys are going to be in the postseason. Some of them will be fortunate enough to go on longer. So I'm just going to jump in really quick
go for it.
to my statement of the week. So for me, this is tying right into the whole Rangers and Phillies and pulling for them both to make the play or the World Series. And of course, only one of them is going to win. But I'd be happy with either of them because. This is a year where people have been griping about the top payroll teams. You look at the Mets and the Padres not making the playoffs, the Yankees not making the playoffs. You even look at teams like the Dodgers, a high payroll team, where they didn't go far in the playoffs. I'm sure you're going to be touching on that a little bit. Um, but we still have three teams that are in the top 10 in payroll in the postseason right now. I mean, the Phillies, the Astros, and the Rangers are all top 10 in payroll. The Arizona Diamondbacks are the one outlier. And I know we're going to hear about what, the quote unquote value of a win, and advocates for that saying, well, this is why you don't spend very big in free agency. You go for sustainable young talent, all these principles that basically say,
Well, the
I'm
Rays do
happy
good.
if the team that I cheer for don't spend money. The Rays do pretty well, but where are the Rays sitting? They're sitting in the exact same spot. Where are the Baltimore Orioles sitting? The exact same spot as all of these bigger payroll teams right now. Let's look at how the Phillies and the Rangers in particular have gotten here this postseason. And quite frankly, for the Phillies, it was last year too. Zach Wheeler, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Trey Turner, who we hadn't even mentioned so far, all were big
briefly,
free agent purchases. The Rangers, Nathan Eovaldi, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Jacob DeGrom, John Gray, all big free agent purchases. Max Scherzer, a big trade, essentially taking on his salary from the Mets. Jordan Montgomery, another big trade. I mean, even Arizona, a majority of their impact players arrived via trade or free agency, albeit for their trades, that's more picking up younger players or prospects and having them come up through the organization. Basically, all I'm saying is that it's really fun to watch baseball teams go for it, actually spend money and go for it. And even though the Rangers, they spent a bunch of money last year, they didn't make it. Those same players are here on this team right now, perhaps giving them a chance to win their first World Series in franchise history. The Phillies, again, are back here in the postseason trying to win a World Series. I understand that baseball front offices operate on a lot of the same or very similar metrics in determining what the value, the cost, the dollar amount of an individual win is. But as we are seeing in this postseason, it's very different from the regular season. If you want to make it to the postseason on this whole value-based model, sure, go ahead, do it. Knock your socks off. Lord knows that there's an expanded playoff, so more and more teams are going to be able to do that. But to actually go out and win the World Series, you got to spend money. You got to buy the players that are going to show up in the big moments, the Bryce Harpers of the world, the Kyle Schwarbers, the Corey Seagers of the world. You're going to have to go out and spend money and bring in these big money players. So as much as I enjoy analytics, as much as I can appreciate that side of things, maybe a market inefficiency is actually just, buying good players. So I'm really happy to see the Rangers and the Phillies get this far. I hope that they continue to go far, because they're a good pushback against the whole argument that these other teams that spend a lot of money are wasteful or frivolous or whatever. It's good to see teams actually try to go for it and cheer for them as opposed to cheering for the Pirates and the Athletics and the Royals of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Tom. I'm going to go a little bit different route in needing to fix these playoffs. So the top 5 teams record-wise combined for 1 playoff win this postseason. I agree to an extent with what you're saying. Regular season, postseason, need the rotation. It is a little bit different. With that said, though, the best teams in the current playoff format get punished. Baseball is all about repetition. Unlike, and I mean, obviously I could sit here and argue that the whole resting thing in the NBA does hurt these players more than it helps them. But baseball is a very rhythm game. Even if you go 5 or 6 days without hitting a baseball, you can't simulate a 100-mile-per-hour fastball with movement in a game. You can't simulate, an 85-mile-per-hour slider or curveball that's moving like crazy. The best teams, you don't want the bye like in the NFL. You want to be playing right away. That is why the 2016 Cubs, I think, are the last 1 seed in a full season to win the World Series. I think the 2020 Dodgers, I think, were a 1 seed. That was in the COVID-shortened season. They won the World Series. But the 1 seeds are not winning the World Series in the playoffs. In this case, the 2 seed, the 3 seed, they aren't winning either. Also, they got to make it based on best records. The fact that you have to force, a team like the Rays to play in the wild card round, when they should maybe have the bye like the Orioles did. That's messed up as well. But I think you have to reward the 1 seeds. You want to add these extra wild card teams, have them play 1 game. Too bad. You play 1 game, you get a wild card spot, you had a chance to win the division. I would reseed it based on best records too, though, not just, like I would put the Rays as the 2 seed in the AL because they had the second best record. Don't make these teams wait 5 or 6 days. You're at a disadvantage. Also, don't do a 3-game series for a 1 seed. 3-game series is wide open, Tom. These should be 7-game series, and they should play 2 days after the regular season ends. You get a wild card, you play on Monday, get back on the road, play Tuesday against these teams. I don't think it's helping the game. I know it's great, Cinderella stories, Phillies, great. We saw them last year, Rangers, great. I want to see a Dodgers and Braves Champions League series. Those are the 2 best teams in the National League. We're robbed of a Dodgers-Braves series in part because of, yes, baseball luck of the draw, but the playoffs are set up for the 1 and 2 seeds to not succeed. They have to have a bye. They have to wait all these games to lose their rhythm. Then they get put in a 3-game series, a 5-game series where, in baseball, a 3 or 5-game series, I know 7 games not way different, but it allows more of the better team to come out on top over a longer series. No more 5-game series, no more 3-game series. The best teams in baseball should play 2 days after the season ends. You want to get extra wild card teams, put in as many as you want, as long as it's 1-game wild card scenario the day after the season ends, because this is too messed up. I think it shouldn't be a disadvantage to get the 1 seed. You should be rewarded for the 1 seed. The baseball teams are not getting rewarded for the 1 seed. They're not getting rewarded for the second best overall record in the league. It's a messed up system, and we got to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, another culprit in here is straight up money. TV deals, the amount that the baseball gets.
But do the 7 games, though. You get more games that way. 7-game series throughout the entire playoffs.
That's the sort of thing where that's a different money conversation, because that's the sort of conversation where I would say, hey, maybe shorten the regular season a little bit. I think essentially where baseball is at right now is that they're at a crossroads of having 2 completely detached entities of the regular season determining the best overall teams and the World Series determining a tournament winner. Essentially, it's kind of more akin to the March Madness tournament, where the team that wins that year is really the team that's playing best at that point in time. I don't think we would say, for example, like UConn was the number 1 team. I mean, they played that way at the end, but if we were to, there's just too many different moving parts. And so you just have this March Madness tournament to determine some sort of champion. It's a bit arbitrary, and it feels like baseball is a little bit similar in that way. I mean, I would say basketball probably has the best overall format for playoffs, tying regular season to postseason. But yeah, I agree with you. I like to see these really good teams. I saw that as well. I like to see these teams face off each other as well, but unfortunately, just the way that playoffs work in a short series situation, that's just not going to happen. And I don't think we're going to get extended playoffs or extended series. I think there's just going to be too much fatigue, both for players and for viewers, unless we shorten the regular season. But again, that's money that's got to be given up.
I think mind the regular season so much, but I think we can do better with the playoffs. But anyway, Raider, I think needs to go outside. So we take him outside. I think we're going to have a bye week next week. Both of us got some work conflicts. So most likely 2 weeks from now, which I guess we'll be talking World Series. We have a basketball preview to do as well for the NBA season. That starts next week. Sneaks up on you, Tom. Great time to be a sports fan.
Looking forward to it, though. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Dame Time and Giannis going to do great. That'll do it for us today. Thank you, Tom, for co-hosting, for being on the show with me. Thank you to all the viewers, listeners. You guys are great. We'll see you soon. Have a great day.